Guys, what's the crack? Welcome to the Bitcoin with Dinny podcast. Good to see us all here. And I want to introduce Rob Wallace, co founder of Bitcoin News. Rob, welcome, man.
Oh, thank you for having me.
So we met out in Madeira, and you meet a lot of people in the Bitcoin space. But one thing that stood out for me straight away for you is that you've really you're now working full time in the space, man. You've made the full transition.
Yes. Yeah.
Bit like myself, and we'll get into that a little bit. The one thing, the one thing I wasn't prepared for when I started working full time in Bitcoin was the way it's not just a normal cycle of business. That's one thing I wasn't prepared for. Is that, oh my god, the bear market was pretty brutal from a business standpoint. Did you notice that as well?
Oh yeah. I mean, that's when I really got on board with Bitcoin news was in the depth of the bear market, right? Right after FTX blew up and everything. So I sort of had the benefit of joining when it was at its worst, right? And it only has gotten better since then. But yes, I mean, it definitely prepares you that you have to be ready for that 4 year cycle and know that 18 months to 2 years of it are going to be a high like you've never experienced before, and then the other are going to have a year in there that is definitely hard going. So it makes you prepare for the future. That's for sure.
Yeah, 100%. It also sort of, you get to live through why a lot of these companies go wallop throughout the market cycles, and why, I suppose we say not your keys, not your coins, but it's certainly a more difficult business cycle than a traditional company that doesn't go through these short-term extreme volatility cycles in terms of new customers. We must get in. And then, like, where's all the customers? We're after buying all these offices and hiring all these people, and suddenly no one wants to talk to us anymore. It's crazy stuff, isn't it?
Yeah, it tests your conviction, but I think it trains you to be prepared and to be lean, and you need to, even when times are really good, you got to think for that winter that's coming up and put your nuts away and be sure that everybody on your team is fulfilling their potential and providing what they need to in both times of plenty and in times of less.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Always thinking for the future, isn't that the Bitcoin ethos? I want to start off, man, and get about getting into your pre-Bitcoin story, like sort of, what was your journey into Bitcoin, and ultimately to leave you to going full-time Bitcoin. What's that look like, Rob? What you do before this?
Yeah, absolutely. So my Bitcoin story, I would say, starts all the way back in 2008, 2009 with the financial crisis. I was a student at Tufts University up in Boston, studying international relations and Chinese. And I thought that I wanted to work for the US government, be a diplomat. I loved history and I loved political relations, and just thought that that was where my life was calling me. But then the market crashed, right? Lehman Brothers and Bear Stearns went belly up. And what did we see? I went home for after class one day, turned on the TV, and saw the Secretary of the Treasury, Hank Paulson at the time, get on TV and say, if we don't give the bank $700 billion by the end of the week, it's going to be martial law. We're going to have tanks on the streets and it's going to be absolute pandemonium. And that just didn't sit right with me, right? I mean, these bankers made all these horrible bets, and now the taxpayer, us, the average citizen, it needs to pay for it. And from that moment, I realized something is not adding up here. So that led me down the rabbit hole, and I looked into things such as, of course, the Iraq War and what got us into that. Um, and that eventually led me to hard money and the Austrian School of Economics and Mises. And Ron Paul was very popular at the time, especially with college students. So we've gone into him and Audit the Fed and all those things. And so I was definitely hard money pilled for over a decade now. And what happened after that was I went to China and got rid of my ideas or dreams of wanting to work for the US government. I said, no more of that. I want to be a capitalist and work on these global markets. So I went to China, was learning Chinese, and was having really quite the time there. Back before Xi was president, it really was very welcome to Americans or foreigners, and you could start businesses, try things, and there was very little regulation, overhead, or anything like that. So we were throwing events. I started my video production career there, doing documentaries and music videos and a comedy YouTube channel. and really had quite the amazing time. Then came back to America around 2015 or so, started working in New York City, doing advertising, video production. Fast forward to the pandemic. I had known this whole entire time that something was wrong with the money, right? And that it affected all levels of society. But I hadn't found Bitcoin yet. In 2015, my friend told me about it. I was interested. I thought, why not dabble? I went to a Bitcoin ATM in New York City, put in $1,000 and got 2.2 Bitcoin. Right, and so I thought, okay, cool. I'm good. I've got some Bitcoin exposure here, but I had no idea what to do with it. Right, I had a QR code on a printout from the Bitcoin ATM, and I had no idea about hardware wallets or properly storing my Bitcoin. So I was traveling around with this QR code in my backpack. I was at the airport in Las Vegas, put down my backpack on the ground, put in $5 into the slot machine, pulled the slot machine twice, lost my $5, of course. And when I looked down, the backpack was gone with the Bitcoin. And the Bitcoin was and that was that, right? So that was 2017, and I had to watch the parabolic run up from like $2,000 up to 20,000 with my hands in my pockets, being like, oh my god, I just fumbled that back. And so I was a little upset with myself, and it took me a while to get back into Bitcoin, but it was always in the back of my mind. Then 2020 happened, and I saw them print $6 trillion within a matter of 6 months or so, and I realized something's horribly wrong here. Once again, got that feeling in my stomach that I got when I saw Hank Paulson on TV back in 2008, and so I went down the Bitcoin rabbit hole, and it's changed me, right? I mean, as I'm sure a lot of listeners can relate to, once you really get bitten by that bug, you really don't look at the world the same way. So I was still working in video production in New York in 2022. I worked on a travel show for Barstool Sports, comedy travel show, extremely funny, Rediscovering America. I advise you look it up if you ever have a little bit of time, you want to laugh. But again, I mean, that was where my talents lay and whatnot, but I felt a burning need inside of me to take what I had learned in video production and media and translate that into Bitcoin. So in early 2023, I saw an ad for a video editor for Bitcoin News. Joined up with Lee, who was running it at the time, and just grew my responsibilities through Bitcoin News over the course of 2023. Took over the Twitter, and I've grown that from 20,000 followers when I started to over 120,000 today, and have just taken on more responsibility. Then in September, Lee stepped away from the company, and my co-founder and I, we took it over completely, and have really been running with it since. And yeah, it's of course there's ups and downs. Being an entrepreneur is a lot of work. Your mind never really gets a day off. But I really wouldn't trade it for anything, just to be able to wake up every single day and be in the midst of Bitcoin, what's happening, and to be interacting with who I think are some of the smartest and best people in the world. So it's a lot of fun. I'm very happy to be here.
It's awesome, man. It's quite the story. I think there's two ways to come to Bitcoin. Well, there's probably more, but there's like come for the money, okay, and possibly I came for that, but it's also be more open to it because your trust has been broken in whatever your area of expertise you happen to be in. For me, pre-Bitcoin wasn't finance. I've had decades of experience in the health and nutrition space, and when I see the amount of nonsense that is within that, I'm like, well, if I can now have enough experience and education and understanding to know that is just plain nonsense, okay, and that's putting it mildly. Well, what else happens to be nonsense? Maybe I'm a little bit more open to it. And of course, I went down the route of then understanding the money was broken, similar to you. Became a gold bug, was a gold investor before I was a Bitcoin investor. And then I think the transition is quite easy if you're, I'm always someone who tries to position myself ahead of, where the world is going rather than where the world is. So then once I really started to consume some quality Bitcoin education, it was so easy. It was like, how did I miss this thing? Dinny, you've had your head up your ass for the last few years. Like, this is clearly so obvious, and you need to quickly position yourself. in this new Bitcoin world, because we're going there whether we like it or not. And what an asymmetric opportunity to build a company within the space and get to, you know, sort of mingle your hobby and your business all into one. So it's the dream scenario. I'm sure you get a bit of that as well. Like,
Yes, no, absolutely. I mean, just to be able to turn my Twitter addiction into something profitable is a nice turn of events. Yeah, I mean, I had to limit myself to Twitter to just like an hour a day before I started this business. But now that I feel like Bitcoin News, I mean, I don't want to toot my own horn here too much, but I feel like we do contribute to the space, right? And I feel like we are a valuable resource. And if you can scroll our page at the end of the day and get caught up on everything real quick, and then you're good to go. So if it's something that I enjoy to do and it provides service to others, I mean, that's the point of all this, right?
yeah, and literally, I was doing that very thing earlier, and I was like, subscribe to the newsletter to get all the Bitcoin news in one place. So I was like, hell yeah, stuck in my email address. And then I was like, if the guys are doing all the work, save me trying to go everywhere and find out all the news. This is just a quick and easy solution for me. So yeah, let's pivot into that. Tell us about Bitcoin news, man.
Yeah, so it's me and my fellow co-founder, who will remain anonymous at this time. But yeah, so me and him, we are running this organization from, I'm in New Jersey, and we've got a team around the world, right? We've got an editor in Iran and a designer in Thailand. My fellow Twitter right-hand man, Daniel, he's in Italy. We've got our podcast guy in Colombia, Juan Galt. And so we've got this team that's around the world, right? Writers from everywhere and contributors. And it's beautiful because people like myself wanted to contribute and are willing to put in their time and effort. And even if take a pay cut in order to contribute to this, right? They are getting paid in Bitcoin. Everybody on the team thoroughly enjoys that. But I mean, they understand that we're a startup, we're gritty, we're trying to just do whatever we can to make this dream become a reality. And so, yeah, I mean, we've got all these different verticals, right? We've got 5 articles a day coming out, 5 plus now, on the website, bitcoinnews.com. We've got our Twitter, which I'm on 18 hours a day. We've got our YouTube. We just brought Luke Mikic, the Australian YouTuber. He's now part of our team, and he's making at least 3 videos a week over there. Highly recommend checking out the Bitcoin Newscom YouTube channel. We've got our newsletter with Bam, who's formerly from Bitcoin Magazine. And so we put out Bitcoin News Weekly once a week. That comes out on Monday mornings. And we follow that up with a space on Mondays. And we've got our spaces on Monday morning for the newsletter. And then on Tuesdays and Fridays with Juan Galt, where we interview prominent people from the Bitcoin space. So yeah, man, it's just a full-on media onslaught, right? And so we've got to check all these boxes and make sure that we're covering all these things and just building it up step by step, because we expect there to be a whole lot of new people coming into the space over the next 6 to 18 months, and they need to be educated and they need to find the right information, you know, and not be drawn down the lures of the altcoiners and dark alleys of the crypto space.
Yeah, some people have to touch the stove though. I know I certainly touched it. That's sweet. We met out in Bitcoin Madeira, and one thing that I noticed from being out there, and it's possibly one thing that attracted me to Bitcoin, is there's a huge diverse array of people in Bitcoin, but they seem to be just people who I get on with, who are into sort of what I'm into in terms of they have a similar. I think it's more of we want more responsibility possibly for our life. We want more control of our life. Do you find that? Did you find that, or is that like? And I suppose with my following question, like, what is it that attracted you to Bitcoin initially? Like, why? I know now, once we know what we know, it's like a no-brainer. But initially, what was the initial attraction into Bitcoin, the unknown, volatile, financial, whatever you call it, when none of us understood what the hell it was?
Yeah, it's funny. I mean, many people, I could say myself included, get attracted by number go up, of course, and you see the big gains that people have made, and you think, oh, I want to get in some of that too. But it was wild to me how much of my personal philosophies coincided with what I learned the Bitcoin space was defined by, right? Since 2008, 2009, I thought that America might be on the verge of hyperinflation. I was wrong, but I think we definitely were put on that path since that time, right? And it's just a matter of time that it actually comes to fruition. And so, I mean, that got me into the idea of self-sovereignty, being a prepper, right? I mean, in America, that's such a dirty word. Oh, you're a prepper. You think the electricity might not work for more than 7 days. Oh, you're stupid and evil in some way for trying to prepare for such things. But I mean, yeah, I mean, having a stock of food, right? Being mentally, physically, and spiritually strong. I think that those principles are a part of Bitcoin in some weird way. Right now, I'm reading Scott Tedell's book before it comes out, The Tao of Bitcoin, and just Bitcoin is this mysterious thing that sort of sucks you in, and then you realize you're in the middle of it, and it transforms your life. So I think that being, as you said, the word responsibility is such a huge one. Whether it's taking care of your keys properly, looking out for the future of your family in terms of finance, and taking care of your body, right? I mean, Bitcoiners and being anti seed oils go hand in hand. So I mean, it is a radical shift from the way that the modern world tries to take that responsibility from you, right? And say, it's okay, we've got you covered, we're going to bail you out, just consume this garbage, and you'll have a pension, and the state will take care of you. But that's not what Bitcoiners want. And I think because just look at the depression rates, look at the amount of lonely people. If people were more willing to take responsibility and to pull themselves up rather than look for a handout or look for someone else to solve their problems, we probably one of the things that we're facing as a civilization today.
Yeah, it's so interesting, and but I do just find that it does resound around Bitcoiners as they are happier to take responsibility. Now, in terms of global adoption, I don't think that's going to work because we've created a world of people who want everything done for them and don't want to take any responsibility. And I suppose, lo and behold, now we have an ETF that basically fulfills that need for them of you don't have to do anything, just give us the money, we'll take care of it all.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think of the ETFs? Do you think they're net good, net bad? I always think they were inevitable. So
Yeah.
so there's that aspect of it. Whatever you think, Bitcoin has to be stronger than them. Even if you think it's a net bad, it's like, well, it would be quite ignorant to think we weren't going to get here eventually. So yeah, I'd love to hear your two sats worth on the ETFs.
Yeah, I think inevitable is a great word to describe it. I mean, if you expect Bitcoin to become the world reserve currency, of course, it's going to be financialized to some regard, right? And so you're going to have people like BlackRock and Fidelity wanting to get into the game and be able to sell it to their clients. If we look at the current state right now, these ETFs hold around 4% or so of the total Bitcoin supply. Do I think it could ever get to a point where they hold 10 times that? No. I mean, I think if we're looking at that, I mean, the price of Bitcoin has to be $5 to $10 million, right? In order for them to have gobbled all of that up. And then we've got hyper Bitcoinization, and Bitcoin is really the neutral reserve currency of the world at that point. So, I mean, I do think that these ETFs have come in to sort of bootstrap this next phase of Bitcoin where it becomes more ingrained. I mean, just today they came out, the Japanese pension fund, the largest one in the world with $1.5 trillion of assets, is exploring Bitcoin now, right? So would that happen without these ETFs? I don't think so, right? So it's a necessary part. It's coming. I mean, it was coming, and now it's finally here. Will it ever get to a point in which they are able to control or kill Bitcoin? Not if we do our job and educate people about taking responsibility and taking control of their own keys, and as long as, I mean, the vast majority of Bitcoin, right? At least 11 million of it is held within the hands of individuals. And I think that's the saving grace, right? We're a bunch of psychopaths, and we're not going to hand over our keys to BlackRock for safekeeping. No, we trust ourselves.
Yeah, and that's how I sort of think of it as well, Rob. That the majority of the Bitcoin sits in the hands of psychopaths. You know, people who will hodl. And even when I started, and once I like, obviously I come for the money, fast money, blah blah blah. Then I'm like, how did I miss this? Then I'm like, okay, there's a portion of my Bitcoin that I will hodl to the death, to zero, just for the mission. Okay, and I know I'm not the only one who has this. That it's bigger than the financial. It's bigger. This is a movement. This is for the greater good of humanity. So I've got to play my parts. And with these Bitcoin or whatever I've chosen, I will ride them to zero happily. And I think over 2020 or 2022, sorry, we've seen a lot of that with the crash. Like even Sailor was like, we're ready to ride it to zero with the amount of coins he owned. Never mind all the other earlier Bitcoiners who possibly own as much as him, and who would be even more libertarian or almost anarchistic. So that's one thing that sort of gives me, it allows me to say, right, well, as big as BlackRock may get, and as big as these ETFs may get, and despite the bids that they will put on people's Bitcoin, the majority of Bitcoin is going to remain in Bitcoiners' hands and in Bitcoiners' families. And the Bitcoiners today will set up the structure because we understand that hard times create hard men, and hard men create good times. They understand the cycle, so they will, I believe, put the protections in place for generations to come. And that's how smart. When you really think of Bitcoiners, they're not just thinking of next year the new car they're going to buy. They're thinking generations down the line, and that's my comfort in yes, ETFs are here and Bitcoin has to be stronger than them, but I believe it's the Bitcoiners who are in control of the Bitcoin, and they realize the power they have, and they're not going to give up that power. They're going to put in place, because we're always thinking of the future. In terms of the price action, since say this year, are you surprised? Were you expecting it? How's that?
I think a new all-time high before the halving, of course, is unprecedented. First time that's ever happened. There are some caveats with that, of course. If you inflation adjust it, the true 69,000 back in 2021 is actually 79,000 today. So we've lost that much in just 3 years, right? That much purchasing power. And then you also have to consider all the paper Bitcoin that FTX was putting out into the market. So I mean, that definitely blunted the previous all-time high. Should we have gotten to 100K last cycle in 2021? Probably. I mean, that double top was also super wonky. That had never been seen before. So I mean, hitting 73, I mean, was awesome, but it was weird in the sense that nobody really cared that much. I remember the day leaving Madeira, I was on the plane from Lisbon back to New York City, and I mean that felt euphoric. That felt like 2021, when we were just creeping up exploding through the 60s on the way to 69. Everybody, that felt like, wow, we're taking on the world again. But since we broke 69,000 and had that week above it, it seemed like sort of, it wasn't that ecstatic, and I think that's a good thing, right? Retail really isn't here yet. There are some worrying things, such as these meme coins. I mean, it's really been sort of ridiculous what's going on with some of these coins that literally, they say upfront, these have no utility, right? These are simply gambling, and you usually don't see that until more of a peakish of the market. But in terms of price action in general, could we go down to the 50,000s right now? Yeah, absolutely. And I don't think anybody should be scared or worried if that happens. These 20 to 30% pullbacks are completely natural during bull runs. You need the market to cool off, to consolidate in order for it to move higher. So yeah, I mean, again, think long term. If this had shaken you out, if the fall from 73,000 down to the low 60s has scared you, then boy, you got some training to do. But just hold on and educate. I think the number one thing to build conviction is just learning more. So listen to more podcasts, read some more books, and I think you'll grow that conviction through education.
Yeah, it's right. It's rite of passage is what I say to people, is what sort of sorts you out to be able to buy Bitcoin and for it to trend down, and for you to just like, and I still own the Bitcoin. Like, what of it? Because I think, like, yeah, maybe you can be lucky and you can come in at the right time and you can put your Bitcoin position on, it goes up only. But I don't really know anyone like that. Most of us have, been battered around the place, and it's only the fact that it's proof of work. Like, we've dedicated so many hours to understand the technology, to understand the volatility is a feature, not a bug, and to understand, like, yeah, sailors after making a couple of billion without doing any work, potentially, and was it easy for him? No, he sat in a conference when he was like 50% underwater, and had to get interviewed and had to get bashed on mainstream media for months, years, and then made a few billion. But it's like, it wasn't magic, it wasn't luck. It was that he had done the hours and hours and hours and hours that it took. And it's the same today. So, I only had conversations with clients this morning on that very thing. Well, what about the current crash, Dinny? And it's just like, what crash? It's like, we've been up only for like way too long. We're just consolidating. We're just like having a breath before God knows what's to come. But fundamentally, has anything changed? And again, this is like, I remember the conversation back in 20 when we went into the last bear market. It was like, has anything changed? Is there not a block getting made every 10 minutes? Is anything structurally different in the asset? And it's not. It's the same Bitcoin that traded at $1,000, that traded at $100, that traded at whatever price we go to. It's just a question of the knowledge has to saturate. And as an investor, that's your asymmetric opportunity, is that if you're prepared to consume the knowledge and do the work before it's done for you, and it just becomes the thing that if you have a pension, the pension owns Bitcoin and all the work's done for you. But this is proof of work. If you're prepared to go and exchange your time and like bring the knowledge together, you put yourself in an amazing position. And then you realize that the volatility is nothing to be scared of. The volatility is your advantage to go, oh my God, how early is it? We had a piece here, we're in Ireland, and we had a piece go out last week on the radio on a Wednesday, and I had a really busy day. And I thought, oh, Bitcoin piece coming out on the radio, national broadcaster. We've really made it, Dinny. We're past the bad times. And Rob, when I tell you this guy was so uninformed, it was like, pick a subject that you know nothing on, and I say to you, you've an hour to research it, and then we're going to interview you on it. It literally was like that. The guy had not got a clue. And it really annoyed me. I had to write emails, I had to ring into the station, I had to WhatsApp into their WhatsApp thing, I had to tweet them, I had to get other people to tweet them, ruin my day. And then later on that evening I thought, oh my God, like how early is it, Dinny, that we're still here? Like, I'm like, Bitcoin's a global asset now. And in the Republic of Ireland, we are still so backward and so behind. And you can get annoyed about it, or you can go, what an opportunity for those people. We're not too late, because this is literally what's been broadcast to the population of the country. This sort of advice that, people are losing their money with this thing. When it crashed there from 69 to 16, thousands of people lost their money. It's like, nobody lost their money who didn't sell the asset. Mm-hmm. You just understand that the volatility is part of it. So yeah, no, it's just like, I don't know how it is over where you are, but we have a lot of work to do here in Ireland, man. We need more people getting on the Bitcoin news instead of listening to our national broadcasters, for sure.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I mean, Bitcoin is really more of an ego test than an IQ test, right? You sort of have to, in order to really get into it, you have to realize, oh, maybe the assumptions that I've had my whole entire life are not correct. Maybe the way that money is created is robbing me rather than providing a medium of exchange for the people, right? So you have to be able to question authority, question your assumptions that you've had before. And many people, especially those within the legacy media, that's just not really what they're paid to do, right? They're paid to parrot a certain viewpoint and to maintain that. But just going back to the price action for 1 second is, I mean, when I got into Bitcoin in 2020, I was able to get in before the halving, right? So it had crashed to 3,000, 4,000, and I got in when it had essentially doubled from there, right? And so I was able to ride it up from that pre-halving to up to the 69,000, and you think that you're a genius, right? You think, oh my God, like I did it, this thing, we're in a super cycle, this thing is never going down. Like I did the work, put in the homework, and now I've been able to achieve this financial liberation. But then it crashed, right? And then it crashed from 69 to 16,000. And I realized, especially in the beginning of all that, that wow, I mean, I sort of had too much of identity and ego tied into the price, right? I mean, of thinking that I was smart and thinking that I had made the right decisions and that I had done one better than somebody else. So I think that these ups and downs are necessary in order for people to learn, and it also provides, bear markets are for building, right? And so having those breathers, having the attention veer off of Bitcoin for a little bit allows people to put their heads down, do the hard work, and to come up with innovations that help push us forward in the next bull market and towards further global adoption. So it's so thankful to have been through a full cycle now, coming up on another halving, and to be in this position of being able to help people through this journey, having been through it at least one full cycle already, and embarking on this next one.
It's awesome, man. I'd like to touch back on one thing you said, and perhaps for people who are newer, because a lot, basically, Bitcoin with Dinny, my job is no coiners, take them from no coiner to, you know, owning some Bitcoin, dollar cost averaging, creating a Bitcoin pension strategy, whatever. And when they hear that you say something like, because I would have been like this, so the current system is effectively robbing me. Like they'd be like, nah, that's too much. What's he talking about? Sure, how would he get away with robbing us? Would you be able to give us an overview? What would cause you to come out with such a strongly worded sort of statement as the current system is robbing us?
Yeah, absolutely. So it all goes back to the money and the way that it is created, right? We, up until 1971, were on a gold standard. There was supposedly a certain amount of gold backing up the paper currency that's in your pocket. Since 1971, Nixon closed the gold window and just said that the dollar is backed by the full faith and credit of the US government. And since then, what have we seen? We've seen the US go from being the largest creditor in the world in the 1960s, having the greatest excess of money of all time, to now being the largest debtor of all time. It took us over 200 plus years in America to accumulate the first $1 trillion worth of debt. And now we're accumulating $1 trillion worth of debt every 100 days, right? And the real crux of the issue is that for every dollar that they print, they're stealing value from the dollars in your bank account, right? Something has value due to its scarcity in many regards. And when they are able to create $6 trillion, 40% of all dollars within a matter of 6 months during COVID, well, hey, you're going to feel that because those dollars are going to start chasing all the scarce goods that you want. The food, the housing, the clothing, all those things are going to get more expensive because they created these dollars out of thin air, and now those dollars are going to go chase the things that you want and that everybody else wants. So if you look at, and it's the funny thing, it turns out, is that everywhere the government gets more involved, the prices tend to go up. You look at education, you look at healthcare. Those prices have just skyrocketed for my entire lifetime and well before that. If you look at things such as electronics and TVs, those are the few things that the government's not involved in, and those prices are plummeting, right? So when the ability to print money is an extreme power. It allows them to go into foreign wars and to do these welfare programs that are not funded. And it means that they don't need to go to the citizens and say, hey, you need to pay for this through your taxes. They'll just promise you things by how do they do it? How do they provide them? By printing money out of thin air. And that steals your purchasing power. And that purchasing power that they stole, they're able to go out and buy the things that they promised you. So you really gotta question the premises that you've been taught since you were a kid. I mean, that's the thing. They don't teach us in school, right? Keynesian economics, which is the widespread economics across the West, says that these deficits don't matter, and that the government's role is to print money and to lube up the system and make sure that it works. Well, at the end of the day, as I said before, they are robbing you. It's something that you should be aware of.
Really good, man. And I suppose, yeah, like you mentioned Keynesian economics, and we've got Austrian economics, which is more the Bitcoin ethos. And how I sort of explain it to people is, have you just got Ribena over there? Do you ever hear Ribena? It's
No.
like you put it in your water and it flavors it.
Mm-mm-mm.
Okay, so it's like some concentrate. You put it in the water, it might make it like strawberry. You're like, oh yeah, that's nice. So that's your money, okay? And it's got power, it's got taste, okay, it's got strength. But if I fill the rest of this bottle up with just water, basically I've now diluted the flavor, and now the flavoring is like, nah, not quite the way I like it, okay? And that's literally how your purchasing power is diluted, because as the currency system expands, as there's more money in the world, the money that we have in your bank account, your savings, it just buys you less stuff. It's being diluted like we can dilute, because really the currency, the purchasing power, it's not in the medium, it's not in the individual unit, because it's constantly changing. If we can expand it, it's not backed by anything really. It's just backed by the trust of people. And if the majority of the world, and I was one of them, doesn't understand how the system works, and we use currency as a way to measure, how we're doing. It's a measurement stick of how I'm doing with my neighbors. Do I have a nicer car? Is my net worth more? But like, I remember when I was a young lad, they used to talk about someone won the lotto, and the lotto in Ireland was 1 million. And if you won that 1 million, you never had to work again. You could live. I remember the exact conversation with my mother saying, she was reading out a newspaper going, look at the interest alone. You could live off the interest and never have to ever spend it. But like today, if you're a millionaire in Dublin, Ireland, you buy a nice house, you buy a nice car, you have a family, and now you're broke. Okay, now you need a job to run all this thing. So a millionaire isn't what it used to be. And again, that's how I was fooled. But because it happens slowly, you don't really see it. But I think everything that's happened since 2020 has sped up the process, because we really have inflation smacking on the door going, hi, by the way, your net worth just got divided by 2 over the last 3 years. Don't know if you noticed that. And things are never getting cheaper again. You might want to explore the things the Bitcoiners have been saying. You've been ignoring them for all these years, because they're literally coming true, everything they said. And it's just been a big wake-up call. And I think it's a big catalyst for the next phase of adoption of, people who are Bitcoin non-believers. And it's like, you don't even have to understand Bitcoin. All you have to understand is the problems, and then you start looking for the solution. And I think the problems are smacking on your door now, and a lot of people are aware of them. And then when you do enough work, like I've had a lot of clients come to me and they knew all the problems. They're fully aware of everything, Rob. And all they needed was the Bitcoin thing to be slotted in. And it was so simple. Once I gave them that, and now they're absolute toxic Bitcoin maximalists. But at the time, they just needed someone to help them with their education, because they had all these questions. But what about this? And how does this work? And how does that work? And once they could get satisfactory answers, it was just like the final piece going into place. And it's like, okay, I'm now a Bitcoin maximalist. I've understood the problems for the last 5 years. And now at last, I understand the solution. And I suppose it's like, what damage can Bitcoin adoption do to the fiat world over this next cycle? Well, number go up is one of the best catalysts for adoption. And as much as ETFs, net good, net bad, who knows, who cares? But they are going to cause the number to go up a lot. And that's going to be like a magnet to suck in the next phase of Bitcoin maximalists, who will go through the buy high, sell low, and eventually figure out, I own this, I will ride this thing to zero if I have to. This is for my kids.
No, I'm interested to hear, what is inflation like in Ireland right now? What is the official rate, and what do you think is actually going on in terms of numbers there?
If I Google the official rate now, it's telling me it's 2%. Okay?
Really?
Yeah, right? But the problem is, not the problem, but because most people don't understand the damage. Like when I was a young lad, I started reading books on getting rich. And when I understood compound interest, it was like, that's literally all I got to do. I remember I read a book, How to Become a Millionaire, and it's just literally find something and compound it. And I was in my 20s. And that's brilliant. But I see inflation as the opposite to compound interest. Okay, in that inflation compound. So it doesn't matter what the figure is today, even if it's 2%. It's that they've stole 50% of my net worth over the last 3 years. That's not coming back. That's gone forever. Okay, it's now normal to pay €4.35 for a bloody coffee, even though I could get one for like 185 just a few years ago. So it doesn't matter what the official figure is moving forward. Literally, anyone who doesn't own Bitcoin as a hedge has had their net worth chopped in half, and that never comes back.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, just at 2%, they're admitting to you that you're going to lose half of your purchasing power in 35 years, right?
Yeah.
So if you look at 70, your purchasing power is going to be cut in half twice over the course of your lifetime. And then if that's goes up to 3 to 4%, I mean, then you're looking at 15 years, your purchasing power gets cut in half. And at that rate, I mean, you're really just running the hamster wheel and have no chance of escaping it. And I mean, that's the beauty about Bitcoin, right? It's finite. There's only ever going to be 21 million of them. And because of that, it is able to absorb the monetary premium of everything else. You know, people have invested in real estate in America, and I'm sure in Ireland too, in order to try to keep up with the inflation. They think, oh, the price of my house has doubled over the last 10, 15 years, so I'm in a good spot. I'm good for retirement. Well, why is your house going up that rate, right? In 1970s,
getting older, it's falling apart. It's like,
exactly, it's a depreciation.
Just use your rationale.
Yeah, you need to put work into it, right? I mean, this thing is falling apart, right? And so in 1970, in America, you could buy a house for $25,000, right? Now it's 20x that. Has the four walls that you live in gotten 20x better? Has it provided you 20x more value? No, it's that these infinite dollars that they print out of thin air are scarce and are chasing the things that are scarce. And real estate has been the thing that it's been absorbing all this monetary premium for the last 30, 40 years. But now we have Bitcoin, right? And Bitcoin doesn't depreciate over time. You don't need to pay somebody to fix the roof every 10 years. You know, you don't have toilets that get broken that need to be fixed when you own Bitcoin. So I mean, Bitcoin sort of is this perfect monetary battery that is able to store your purchasing power over time. Why? Because it's finite, right? I mean, the only two things that I really know that are completely finite in life are the time that you have and Bitcoin. So you save in Bitcoin, you'll be able to store the labor that you put in today for the future and not have it depreciate like you would with other investment vehicles.
Yeah, no, I'd agree 100%. And even with what you said about time and Bitcoin being the only two things that are finite, it's so true. And once you get it, you just really get it. And let's say in Ireland, there's so much capital tied up in property, but now we have a housing shortage. And although it's a problem for me personally, if I don't understand Bitcoin, it's also a problem for huge multinationals. So now they come in, whenever there is property built in Ireland, they come in, they scoop it all up, they buy it all off the plans. Companies that don't even sit within Ireland, they're just buying up all the property. Send all the normal people who don't understand Bitcoin and run around going like, this is hopeless. Like, what's the point in me even being productive? We had riots there a couple of months ago, and I'm like, if I was 20 years of age and I could see the world the way it was, why wouldn't I go wreck the place and have a bit of fun? Because I'm not incentivized to do anything productive. I just think this whole game's rigged against me, so I might as well go, smash some stuff and break some things and have a bit of fun, because it's a hopeless scenario. But now we're going to have all the people going to the politicians saying, you have to fix this. So if you happen to be a property investor and you're on the right side of it, it's really apparent in Ireland now that it's going to be taxed out of your hands. You need to find something else, because they will tax this property, physical property, out of your hands. And for me in my consulting office, we see that. We see physical property investors coming and going, no, we want to get out of physical, we want to get out of bricks and mortar and into digital. And it just makes sense. They're just ahead of the curve. They can see where we're going. They can see it's inevitable that the thing is taxed out of their hands and taken from them. So they need to jump ship. And it's quite an easy decision for them once they understand Bitcoin and all the upside with it, without all the downside of the physical property. It's like, okay, well, it fulfills everything that I need, and all the downside that I have all goes away. It's like, wow, why didn't I learn about this sooner? I'm like, welcome to Bitcoin. We all get it eventually, but everybody will, don't worry. So it just seems to have came at the right place at the right time. And it's even like the story of Satoshi and everything. Sometimes I'm like, is this like Terminator 2, where someone came back from the future just to like stick this little incepted here for us to go and pick up and run with. It's a crazy story, but yeah, it's so perfectly positioned, and it's basically what you need. And you know, from all the people we spoke to, it's just like, I can't remember who coined the phrase, but like, to get off zero, just own some Bitcoin, just have a position, because once you own some, it sucks in your attention. Why? Because it performs better than everything else you own over the course of a year, 2 or 3 or 4. So it sucks in more of your attention, and the more attention you give Bitcoin, the more you allow it to then re-educate you and help you forget everything you think you know. The better your life becomes. And I find that, like, you don't have to become Bitcoin wealthy for Bitcoin to change your life in a positive way. Bitcoin is just hope. Once you understand the thing and you know, well, I've taken care of this, even if I only have a 1% allocation, suddenly the world looks more hopeful. It looks like there's a bright future ahead, as opposed to, like, if you understand everything in the world without understanding Bitcoin, like, you've got to be scratching your head and going, like, I don't think this is going to work out too well. Like, what do I need to do? Buy bunkers and buy an island and build big walls? Like, how does this life work out for us?
Yeah, I think you said the word before, which is nihilism, right? The lack of belief that the future will be better, and right now that's across the West. I mean, I'd say that is the overall sentiment. The people are really looking for a way to look into the future and say, oh, this could be better, and Bitcoin provides that. Yeah, I mean, people don't really go to church too much these days, and they're not even many people starting families anymore, right? I mean, and if you can't pay for it, I mean, the fact that people are scared from having kids because they just think it's too expensive, I mean, that's one of the worst condemnations of the human race at this moment, right? I mean, people have had kids during the worst of times, through the bubonic plague, through World Wars I and II, you know, and but now people say, oh no, life's just too expensive, I'm just gonna go out and travel or drink or party and fill up my time that way. But Bitcoin really orients your time preference, as you said, and it allows you to look into the future and say, okay, there is a path forward here. Because I mean, I remember back in 2008, 2009, when my worldview sort of crumbled. It's scary, man. When you have so much faith in a system that's larger than you, and you realize, wow, these people have been lying, not only lying to me, but don't have my best interest at heart. So Bitcoin, harkening back again to responsibility, you take responsibility for yourself, you realize that there is a path, and it changes everything. And again, it's those three things: mentally, physically, and spiritually fit. And the beautiful thing about those is that they're all free, right? You can do 100 push-ups to 100K, and you're gonna get fit. You're gonna read about Bitcoin. You're gonna get mentally stronger, and spiritually. I mean, I personally, I meditate, and I've been on this daily meditation journey since getting into Bitcoin a couple of years ago, and again, it just, to add that calmness and that clarity, I think is so pivotal during these crazy times we live in.
Fair play, man. Meditation is a skill that I was fortunate enough to learn about 20 years ago. I wouldn't say I meditate consistently all the time, but the fact that I know that I can do it and I have done it. I used to meditate for over an hour a day for like years ago. And it's like everything. It's as my dad would say, it's no load to carry, learning how to meditate. And I still do it now. If I have a stressful day or things aren't going right, and there's a lot going on in business, and I run a good few businesses, so I'm always super busy. I know I can just go to the happy place, that once I zen into my meditation, I can get there within about 2 minutes. I just sit down, I close my eyes, and it's and again, it's a free skill. And man, once you're there, once you're learn how to meditate and you enjoy it, you can go to a place where you're happy. You'd be like, if I got trapped here for eternity, like, happy days. And again, it's like, why haven't we taught this stuff in school? Because you come out of meditation, I won't guarantee you know this, but more or less, if I've got a decision to make and I go into a meditation, I know what's right for me. I know what the decision should be. Whereas my ego brain, it'll be more confusing and it'll be whatever. But you go to a proper meditation and peel back the layers and understand what's important to you, your family, your mission, your place in this world. It really strips it back, and it's a beautiful thing. to learn to meditate and to give it the time. I think it gives you back more time, because without the meditation, you're just in your own brain. You're basically wrecking your present, and you can just do that for days and weeks and months if you want, or you can just go beyond all that and learn how to let stuff go.
You really nailed it. I think in doing this meditation for over 2 years now, it just, when I need to make a decision, it becomes clear, right? In that time that I am sitting, trying to just observe my thoughts. Like, your thoughts are always going to be there. Your ego mind is always going to be coming up with new things, whether it's work, I mean, running your own business, there's always something there, right? It's never going to stop. But when you meditate, you can take a step back and realize that you're observing these thoughts rather than you are those thoughts. And when you are observing them, you can realize, okay, I can put that away right now. And you just observe it, you let it go. You observe it, let it go. But in that time of peace and calm and meditation, yeah, the right path usually appears, and then it's there for you just to grab it and take it. And it just makes it so much easier, instead of having to go back and forth and being tied up in constant distractions and whatnot. Yeah, I think meditation, as you said, should be taught in schools. And it is an essential skill for this just mass distraction lifestyle that we live in. Highly recommend any Bitcoiner to look into meditation.
And there's so many different types of meditation. I just started scribbling down them, and some of them I just made up myself. But there's I remember you can think meditation is just focusing on your breath going in and out. It's yeah, that is a form of it. But there's so many other ways, and I'm keep playing with them. And I have an arsenal of meditations, and sometimes I'll try one way and it's not quite working, and then I'll find another one that sucks me in. But yeah, it's a beautiful thing. And it's just a free buzz, I think, because you literally do, you just alter your consciousness. You go to a different place. You come out of it definitely. I come out of it and my breathing is just my heart rate. I know my heart rate is going 20 beats less or whatever it is. I can feel the stress on my body. I can feel the muscles letting go. I can feel my face just falling because I don't have that, in my jaw and everything, or on my forehead or the back of my head. You just feel it like a whoa.
Yeah, and so many people are scared to just start, right? I mean, that's one of some of people's biggest fears, just to be locked in a room with their own thoughts. But you can start small, right? You can start with 2 minutes, 5 minutes, and just build up over time. And it's one of the greatest gifts you can give to yourself. Yeah, it's something that I started back in 2008, 2009, when I felt the world crumbling down around me. I was scared, dude. I mean, I thought hyperinflation was around the corner. I mean, as you can see in the chancellor on the brink of a second bailout, which was the headline that Satoshi put into the Genesis block from the UK newspaper. On that same front page, there was a war going on in Israel and Gaza, right? That had just lit back up again, and it felt like, oh my God, what is going on with this planet? And I was horrified, and I just stood in front of the mirror and asked myself over and over, what do I want? What do I want? What do I want? And in a moment of Satori or whatever, it just came to start meditating. And yeah, I started and was pretty good with it then, gave it up for a couple of years, but now I'm back on a daily basis, and couldn't recommend it more.
Yeah, fair play, man. That's awesome. If we could come back to 2024.
Yeah.
And how do you see the rest of this year going? Do you think we go through a regular cycle, or what's your thoughts, Rob?
Yeah, so there's a couple of big things in the pike, coming down the pike, is the FASB accounting rule changes at the end of this year. And that is, as of right now, companies can put Bitcoin on the balance sheet, but when they report it, they can only report it at a loss, right? If it's gone down in value, they can't mark it to market. So this has been a huge detriment for companies not wanting to touch the stuff or put on their balance sheet, because if it goes down, then they have to report it as a loss of money, but they can't report it if it goes up. So that rule comes at the end of this year. And so I think you're going to see a lot more companies investigating, following the Saylor method. I mean, you look at MicroStrategy, right? And it's gone from $400 to $1,600 today in a matter of 2 months. So that has definitely got the eyes of Wall Street, definitely gotten the eyes of anybody, any CFO who's got to manage a couple $100 million and say, what am I going to put this in? Oh, wow, look at this Michael Saylor guy. He's put in 7 billion and he's turned it into 14 billion. What is he doing over there? So I think that's going to be a huge catalyst for this year. As we said today earlier, the Japanese pension fund is looking into it. So these ETFs enable all these huge investors that had no ability to access Bitcoin in the past to be able to invest into it. So that's going to be a huge catalyst. And yeah, and the number of plebs just keeps growing, right? Whether it's the events like Madeira or Nashville or Bitbox Bloom, like there's just very lots of high quality events. Bitcoiners are growing in number. We are gathering. Go check out a local meetup. You can find them online very easily, and yeah, it's going to be from both ends, right? From the grassroots of Bitcoiners getting together, forming communities, and from these giant players getting in the game. We're entering into a new era, right? It's no longer this geeky currency used by shadowy super coders and drug dealers on the internet. No, it is endorsed by the largest financial institutions in the world, and it is also helping people in Africa have a medium of exchange in order to bank themselves when they don't have access to a bank account. So there's just so many positive narratives on a global basis, and it's hard to be bearish on Bitcoin in any regard right now.
My last question, I've been asking this since 2020. I'm like, geez, we're nearly halfway there now. Bit of crack, bit of fun. What's the price of Bitcoin in US dollars in 2030?
2030. By then, we have certainly surpassed the market cap of gold, right? So if we were to do that, we would be at 600 to 700,000. By 2030, I mean, then you're getting into geopolitical issues, the fourth turning. I mean, China, America, all of that. And I think by then, by 2030, 2032, Bitcoin has become the world reserve asset. And at that point, we're looking at $4 million Bitcoin.
A lot of purchasing power.
Yeah. So you start learning about it today. It's not just me, it's not just some dude in New Jersey saying that Bitcoin could go to $4 million of Bitcoin by 2030. It's there's a lot of people smarter than I who have a lot more experience in finance and who can walk you through this. I mean, all the information is out there, and what we've seen already, Bitcoin going from zero to a $1.3 trillion asset in a matter of 15 years. I mean, this is unprecedented. It's the fastest to a trillion ever, and it's this train ain't stopping, it ain't slowing down. Adoption's only growing.
Yeah, that's awesome. So Rob, where can people get your daily news that I just signed up for?
Yes. Bitcoinnews.com. Super simple. Go there, new articles every morning Eastern time. We've got a newsletter, Bitcoin News Weekly, that you can sign up through the website. And then on the website, on bitcoinnews.com, you can check out our YouTube channel as well as our Twitter. Highly recommend the Twitter. I'm behind that, and it's my duty to keep the people up to date. So check us out over there, and I want to thank you for having me on.
That's brilliant, man. I'm going to put all the links to all your stuff in the notes of this, so wherever you're catching this, you'll be able to connect with Rob. Just go down there and click them, man. Yeah, it was awesome to meet you out in Madeira, man, and excited to watch you crushing it going forward. Thanks very much for coming on today.
Cheers, man. Have a good one.